That's the way we'll be proceeding, and I hand over now to Archdeacon Rich.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Synod. Today we're going to be introducing and reflecting on the Covenant for Clergy Care and Wellbeing. Sharon Potter will introduce that in a moment, but first I want to give an overview of wellbeing in our diocese at the moment. Being an active minister, lay or ordained, can be a most rewarding role. At the same time, it can also contain hidden difficulties. We've heard of some this morning: tensions, isolation, loneliness, and an overwhelming workload. The flourishing and well-being of ordained and authorised ministers is fundamental to the life and mission of our diocese. Bishop Martin has reminded us this morning that clergy are key to growth. Each minister's vocation is unique and different, and it's multidimensional. Life involves being a pastor, a prophet, a shepherd, a leader, and a preacher. We may also add a multitude of other activities, and I did contemplate as coming up with different lists for this. You can add to this a volunteer manager, an administrator, a children's worker, a financier, a building project supervisor. But at its heart, ministry is sacrificial and it's costly. And at the same time, it can be joy-filled and life-giving. Well-being is personal. It's about self-care. There's no one size fits all. We therefore encourage each minister, lay and ordained, to find different ways and resources that are helpful to them in terms of support, in order that they flourish in the ministry that they're called to and in the place where they are. We have a small diocesan wellbeing group that I took on from Archdeacon Jeanette as I began in my new post back in May. The group has recently expanded to reflect the ministries of all, not just clergy. We now have representatives from a range of lay ministries. The plan is that we meet 3 times a year to reflect and to respond on how, as a diocese, we ensure good, accessible care and support for all ministers. Each ministry pathway also has wellbeing and self-care embedded as part of the training. It's part of our IME training for ordinands and curates. The Suffolk Ministry Development Programme that we've heard about earlier this morning also has wellbeing as a thread running through it, and other aspects of training reflect wellbeing as well. The Ministerial Development Review gives each minister the opportunity to reflect with a reviewer on their own wellbeing that they have in place. And we want to continue to encourage clergy chapters and cohort groups and other small groups that meet to make sure wellbeing is part of what's being discussed and reflected on, that we care for each other deeply. We want wellbeing to be discussed at parish, benefice, deanery and diocesan level. Ministry can often be lonely, taxing and difficult. And on our website, we have a wellbeing section that has a range of resources that can be accessed by all. And we're adding to and refreshing this page regularly. And if you come across a useful resource in terms of wellbeing, then please do let me know so we can share it with others. At the heart of ministry, we're tasked with living out God's good purpose for us, fulfilling our calling and proclaiming a God who loves us. It's so important that we take care of our own well-being and that of our colleagues. It's not selfish to take proper time off, retreat and holiday, or to challenge unreasonable and unrealistic expectations, because when we do, we are better equipped for the ministry to which we are called. The Wellbeing Group seeks to be a resource and a support for all ministers, so that we can grow in the likeness of Christ, as Bishop Martin has reminded us today. The group will follow up on the thoughts and responses received from Diocesan Synod today. I hand over to Sharon to introduce the Clergy Covenant.
Thank you very much, Archdeacon Rich. What we're asking, therefore, Synod members to do today is to adopt the Church of England's Covenant for Clergy Care and Wellbeing, GS 2133. The Covenant was made an act of Synod at the 2020 group of sessions of General Synod, and we all know what happened in 2020. It has therefore taken us a little while to get this to Diocesan Synod, as it is not just a matter of simply adopting the Covenant, it is about putting it into practice. Clergy burnout is common in the caring, is common, but it appears that clergy are more susceptible to burnout. It is hard for clergy to complain about their workload. We know that others experience this in our teams. But clergy's work is a vocation. Clergy occupy a very different position in society, and for those who hold stipendiary posts, their livelihood, their social life, and their housing is intertwined. Their workforce is mainly volunteers, and therefore the interaction between clergy and lay people in the work of mission and ministry is unlike any other kind of work relationship. I don't need to rehearse any of the issues here, and you've already heard some of those from Bishop Martin and Archdeacon Rich. The Covenant has come out of many discussions across the Church of England, where clergy across a wide range of traditions and backgrounds have met together, both senior and junior, to bring the issues that clergy face to General Synod and to start a conversation across dioceses, deaneries, benefices and parishes that will help everyone understand the complexities that most stipendiary and many non-stipendiary clergy now face in our modern world. The fruits of these discussions were brought to General Synod, first of all in a document called Clergy Wellbeing, GS 2072, in 2017, drafted by a House of Clergy Wellbeing group chaired by Canon Simon Butler. And GS 2072 set out some ways of changing the culture of the Church to enable care and well-being of its clergy to be more fully addressed, and it then went to the wider Church for consultation. The resulting covenant from that consultation is what we have before us today. There are 3 documents linked to the covenant to aid its implementation. These are designed to help clergy, local congregations, bishops, and the wider Church to reflect and act on the covenant. In each of those documents, there are 4 areas under which questions are grouped, and they are reflecting on our shared baptismal and ministerial calling, reflecting on the way your clergy look after themselves and others, ordained ministers as public figures, and the minister's household or family. You've already received the local congregation's document. May I commend it to you, and may that be a starting point for your deanery synods, your benefices and parishes to begin a big conversation, as it is being called, about how clergy can be cared for by their local congregations and by dioceses. As you have heard from Archdeacon Rich and from Bishop Martin, our diocese has been taking steps to try to support its clergy, to try to help clergy to self-care. But this is not just about self-care. It is about the people in our parishes that work with their clergy. It is about you and me, enabling us together to ensure that we have clergy who do not burn out, who are fulfilled without being overworked, who can give of themselves as they are called to do and as God has intended them to. What we are asking you today, before we formally adopt the covenant also, as Archdeacon Rich has said, is to have some discussion in groups around 4 questions that the Diocesan Wellbeing Group has come up with to help us in starting the big conversation in our local contexts. You will see those 4 questions in the chat. Please, could you also, as well as emailing Charlotte Hodgson your comments, put 1 and only 1 comment in the chat so we can capture that from today. There will not be a feedback session after your time in groups, but there will be time for comments after the motion to adopt the covenant that is proposed, and there will be a simple yes/no vote. So if we could split into our groups, and could I ask you to discuss those 4 questions that you'll find in the chat? Thank you very much.